In the process of making this tree become this pile of happiness with the 14-inch Ryobi my grandfather bought me back in 2019, the chain popped off, damaging at least one of the drive links. Come along with me as we figure out how to buy a new chain and install it on this Ryobi. The plan was to start at the Tractor Supply. With it being right down the road, I figured they'd have replacement chains. I actually used this YouTube channel to pull up an old video so I could identify my chainsaw model, which is the RY3714. Then I used Google to get the numbers I needed. This is my first time buying a chainsaw, but it appears the main things you need to know is the pitch, the gauge, and the number of drive links. For the RY3714, the pitch is 3/8 with a .050 gauge and 52 drive links. In case you have your Ryobi with you, these numbers are also on the blade. These chain specs seem to be pretty common for 14-inch bars, and they had a couple options, with the CountyLine brand being the cheapest at $18, so you know I got that. As you can see here, when the chain popped off the blade, the tip guard damaged the drive links. I did see some sparks flying when this happened, so it does make sense. I'll probably end up removing the tip guard. They are handy to keep the nose from hitting the ground and dulling the blade, as well as providing some kickback safety, but it does make it difficult when cutting larger diameters. Now, removing it is quite simple. It's just held on with one small screw. To get the old chain off, we'll need to remove these two nuts. The chainsaw did come with this fancy multi-tool, but you can just as easily remove with a socket or crescent wrench. While we remove these, I do want to give this chainsaw props. For an $89 chainsaw, I didn't expect for it to still be running 4 years later, but it's been cranking right up. Here's what the inside of the chainsaw looks like, and this diagram here is helpful in identifying the different components, but in our case, we're only removing the bar and the chain. As you can see from this top view, we'll need to pull the chain off the sprocket and around the clutch to remove, and then the bar should slide off the bar studs and away from the clutch. Now that I do have the chain and the bar removed, I do want to clean up a little bit and also check the blade for any damage. Now that we'll get the chain out, we'll compare it to the old one to make sure it looks about the same size, and it does. Now, full disclosure here, I've never actually put a bar and chain back on a chainsaw. As you can see here, I'm trying to put the chain on the bar first, then work it on there. But after doing this, it's probably easier to put the chain around the clutch and on the sprocket first, then situate the bar on the bar studs, then set the chain drives in the bar groove. But I still got it on there without much issue, and it's not too hard. Now, once I get the chain situated on the bar, I want to go ahead and rotate it a few times to make sure both sprockets are working good and make sure that the groove is not bent or any other issues that would cause the chain not to move freely. Now we'll go ahead and put the cover back on. One of the main things about getting the cover back on is making sure that we line up the tensioning screw here, and then of course the two bar studs go in the two holes that are in the cover. The only issue I did run into was getting this cover back on. The adjustment screw on the cover was not lining up right on the bar. It was hard to move the bar around much without all the pieces falling off, so I decided to try to adjust the screw until it fell into place on the bar. I can tell here that the chain was too loose, and in order to tighten the chain, you have to loosen the bar stud nuts, then turn the adjusting screw a few times until the chain is just right. Tightening the adjusting screw is basically pushing the bar out, which pulls the chain tighter. You want the chain to be tight, but not too tight. I test that by spinning the chain. If it's getting stuck anywhere, it's likely too tight, which it was here, so I ended up having to back out the adjusting screw just a little bit until it was perfect. Now I'll tighten the bar stud nuts and this chain will be ready for use. And the next thing I'll do is check the reservoir to make sure it's got some bar and chain oil in it, which it did not. So I want to add a little bit to that and finish cutting down a tree. Rewatching this has me cracking up. It looks like I ran a half-mile getaway here, but it did fall right where I wanted, and now we're down to only 4 Bradford pears. And that about does it for this video. If you watched this far, please think about liking and subscribing, and we'll see you on the next one.